Thank you all for joining us. The Columbian Editorial Board is pleased to welcome representatives from Evergreen Public Schools. We're going to talk about the levy measure that is on the ballot next week. To start with, I'm Greg Jane. I'm the editorial page editor at the Columbian. And I'll let Craig and Jody introduce themselves.
Hello, my name's Craig Brown. I'm the editor of the Columbian and a member of the editorial board.
And I'm Jody Campbell, member of the editorial board.
And then Griffin.
Yes, I'm Griffin Riley. I'm the education reporter here at the Columbian. I've talked with John and Victoria before, so it's good to see you guys again.
Nice to see you, thank you for joining us. And because this is an editorial board meeting, Griffin will not be asking questions in this form, but he might want to speak with you later. And let's start with John. Why don't you introduce yourself briefly, and then we'll have Victoria, and then we'll move on to the issue at hand. So John.
Yes, I'm John Boyd. I'm the interim superintendent of Evergreen Public Schools, and I'm pleased to be with you today.
Great, thank you for joining us. Victoria?
Hi, I'm Victoria Bradford. I'm a member of the school board.
Great, thank you. And I want to clarify, are you technically the president of the board at this time?
No, I'm not. I'm taking a break.
Okay, okay.
Victoria, how many years have you been on the school board?
I think it's 23.
Good job. You are the
Well,
institutional wisdom.
Well, again, thank you for joining us. As mentioned, we want to discuss the levy measure that is on the ballot next week. John, why don't you start out, just give us a brief overview of what exactly people are voting for or against.
Great, I'm happy to do that. So this levy measure is the second of the year for us. We failed the first measure in February. The decision was made to go back out for a vote, lower the rates. The result of that is the overall school tax rates for folks living in the Evergreen Public Schools district, those rates go down. We initially went out at higher rates and adjusted those based on the result. And so the levy that people are voting on, April 26th is the date of the vote. Ballots are out and people are voting as we speak. And these funds support activities, athletics, music, student support, counseling. It supports it supports all of those extra things that students get and that the community values, such as fifth grade music, middle school athletics, high school athletics, safety and security in our buildings, and extra staff to support special education students in needs, nurses, counselors, and things like that. So the important thing about this measure is specifically what it funds to support students throughout the school year in their endeavors.
Now, and you mentioned that a levy measure did fail in February. One thing I want to clarify, do levies require 50% of the vote or the supermajority of 60%?
Good questions. First of all, levies are for learning, is a good way to think about it, and bonds are for building. So bond monies can only be used to major construction projects, building schools, replacing roofs, things like that. And they require a 60% approval rate. Levies are for learning, and again, those extra things that students get, the types of support that are community values, those require a 50% +1 margin.
Sure. And you said this request is less than the request in February?
Correct. The rates that were initially put on the ballot for the February measure were $1.70, then they went up to $1.92, and then again at $2.12. We flattened those out to maintain a $1.70 rate for the taxpayer, and again, the overall result of that is the overall school tax rate will go down for the individual taxpayer. It is a replacement levy, meaning that it's not going to raise your taxes. it will level them out, and actually the overall rate will go down.
Okay. Now, Victoria, first of all, what do you think, what did the district learn from the failure in February?
Well, I would say the number one thing was that we did not do a good enough job of getting the word out. It was shocking to me how many people didn't even know we were having a levy. People who traditionally voted for them. I always say I have a bunco group, and we went on our annual beach trip like a week or so after, and I asked them, what did you think about the levy? And they looked at me gobsmacked, and they were like, we didn't know, and they didn't vote. Well, now all of them are getting their ballots in, and they've got signs in their yard. But so I would say we didn't do the best job getting the vote out. And I think that, we've been through a lot, COVID and, just the issues that school districts have faced through all of that. And there's just some dissatisfaction with what's been happening with schools. And I don't necessarily think it was they were mad at us as much as they were mad at the situation. But a lot of it had to do with us not doing a good enough job of getting the word out.
Craig, do you have anything?
I have a couple questions actually. So by lowering the collection rate to $1.70, will that be able to maintain Evergreen programs? Or are you looking at a cutback situation if the levy passes?
Good question. I just rolled out 2 different plans to our community, and one is for this year, regardless of the measure passing or not. So because of the loss of enrollment and the fact that we've reduced the rate, we're planning for significant reductions. A lot of that is right sizing our staffing for those lower levels of enrollment, but some of it is an adjustment to lower levy collection rates that we're anticipating. And what we told the community was, yes, we're gonna go out and we're gonna lower these rates. We understand inflation is high, that people's assessed values are going up. A gallon of gas is a lot of money now, and people feel strapped. So we're gonna do that. And because people are being asked to tighten their belts, we're gonna tighten ours a little bit too. So this tightening of our belts is going to result in some reductions, coupled with on top of reductions due to enrollment decline as well.
You have 2 factors at work. Well, actually maybe 3. You have the reduced enrollment, so the lesser collection, and then also higher costs for things, because obviously you probably buy a lot of diesel fuel, for example, and every other thing.
Yeah, we're not immune to the inflationary pressures as well with, and you mentioned one of them, gas prices, utilities, the price of all of those things are employee costs. We have to keep our employee costs and our employee salaries competitive to be able to attract and retain people in a very challenging employment market right now. So all of those things do lead us to have to do some belt tightening as well. So that's a good point. The inflationary factors also place pressure on the school district.
So what will Evergreen look like in the coming couple of years if the levy passes, and what would it look like if it doesn't?
Well, if it passes, we're going to be, this year reducing our staffing to right size that staffing, again, tightening our belts a little bit to adjust for the lower levels of collections, but it will look much like it did pre-COVID, pre-pandemic. We'll have the full suite of music and athletics and programs and after-school activities, intramurals for our students, middle school athletics, the support, intervention support that we have for our students that we utilize our levy funds for. It will look very similar, hopefully, to what it did pre-pandemic. The enrollment reductions are not without challenges and pain, and those are individual people that won't have jobs because we have less enrollment. In the case of a levy failure, it looks vastly different than it did pre-pandemic. We'll be eliminating middle school athletics. We'll be eliminating 5th grade orchestra, band, and choir. We'll be reducing our athletic budgets at the high school level, including all of our athletic directors, for about $500,000. There will not be C-team games, fewer C-team and JV games at high school. We won't have the levels of support that we currently have for our students in terms of intervention specialists. On the list too are deans of students that, you may not know the impact of losing those individuals, but they're helping support our positive behavior. They're working to help us with discipline. They're working individually with individual teachers to help them support and manage student behavior post-pandemic, that we know that's going to be important. So all of those positions are really important for supporting our kids. And they're even more important, we think, as we move, hopefully, from pandemic to recovery.
Maria, you said you've been on the school board for a long time and have plenty of institutional knowledge. So what kind of growth and change have you seen in Evergreen schools over the last decade? And are they where you want them to be? What kinds of things have you seen levy dollars paid for?
Well, it used to be it was strictly for the the sports and the arts and all of that. And now we rely on it so much more for support for mental health services. We have a lot of kids and families in crisis. And so we're dealing with more kids in trauma. I mean, from the time when I was on the board, I think it was only about 27% free and reduced lunch for our students. And now we're around 50. I don't know where it's exactly at now. John probably knows better than I, but it's been a dramatic increase in, students needing free lunch and assistance in other ways. So that whole concept of equity has become even more important, and why I agonize over some of the cuts that we're making, because our most vulnerable kids are not going to receive the level of service that they really need and deserve. Mm-hmm. So, like I said, we have mental health services. The school nurses, they've taken on a whole nother kind of importance, not only during the COVID crisis, but we have a lot of kids that have fragile medical conditions, and we need those nurses to help manage their care while they're in school. And then, of course, as John spoke to, interventions, if you want to have a tutoring program, that's not paid for by the state or the federal government, it's paid by levy money. And a lot of our kids, after being remote, and as we all know, that was a challenge for a lot of our students, they need services to get caught up. And, summer school, if we want to do summer school like we did last year, those levy dollars are what help pay for that. So they're just, just the needs are so much greater than when I first came on the board. And some of this was kind of like a luxury, or, the community really valued it. And they wanted a well-rounded experience for their children. And, Jody, you've had kids that have gone through our system. I mean, we have renowned music programs. Mm-hmm. I mean, not just locally, but the state and even at the national level, because we've put a lot of emphasis starting right at kindergarten, because we know that kids that are involved in music do better in school. It helps with brain development. I was just reading a thing today. It's, just all through life, music is really good for the brain. And so those are things that I get. I'm not going to lie. When I saw the list of what the cuts were going to be, I got very tearful, because programs that we have valued for years and years in this community and our community has supported will be, not the same anymore. Yeah. I was last night at the Evergreen Choral Festival, and it was so exciting. I took my 84-year-old mom, and she had a ball. But what was so amazing is to see elementary kids, then middle school kids, and then high school, for the feeder schools. I was at the Evergreen one. And those kids were so engaged in that music and seeing the progression that they make as they go through. If we don't have music at the lower levels, they're not so inclined to
Yeah.
join it later on. I mean, it really needs a foundation to build on. And I hate to see years and years of a publicly supported, valued program start to just, come
Now,
apart because of this.
and you guys mentioned proposed cuts to many programs. Two questions about that for Victoria. One, are any of those cuts, would they or would they impact directly the classroom learning? Well, anyway, go ahead and address that. Would it be directly in the classroom?
You want me to take that one,
Well, yeah.
Victoria?
Okay.
Oh, either one. Go ahead, John, if
Oh,
you'd
yeah.
like.
So this is, right now we're staffed to be able to run the classes that we have. They won't, those classes will continue. The master schedules that our principals have developed are intact, and we're organizing our budget so we can keep them intact. You have to be able to give students a full schedule. And so, but it will impact are all of the extra things that go along with the leadership classes, again, the 5th grade music. We have teachers from the middle school going down to 5th grade to support those students. Those opportunities will go away. The opportunity for a student to do some of those things that make them well-rounded for an application to a college that students count on to be able to put those on their resumes to do that are the types of programs. So it's the extracurricular, it's the athletics, the activities, the support, but the individual class master schedules will remain intact for the most part. Now, with that said, what it will impact is class sizes. And with our levy monies, we're able to be a little bit more generous, especially in kindergarten through 3rd grade. We've had to we're having to boost those numbers closer to the contractual limits that we've negotiated with our labor partner, the Evergreen Education Association, and we'll have to even make those ratios go higher up. So that's the impact on the individual students. It's more difficult to run a master schedule with some of those individuals classes that are less than the contractual level when you have a double levy failure. So you might have to combine classes, and the impact of that is, you might have to have a split class, but if you're doing AP statistics, and you might have to combine that with a statistics class, and the challenges of learning and teaching in that are significant. But the individual master schedules will be run as they're developed.
Now, Victoria, has the school board played any role in figuring out the details of this, or is that just the superintendent's office?
Well, I think it's mostly the superintendent. A lot of it out in, the looking at what do they feel is the most important things in each of their schools. We, of course, as a board, have our values as to what our community wants to see, what we believe is the right thing for students. So obviously we have some input on that, and we will be supportive of what John is proposed to the board. The other thing I did want to add to what John was saying is this also impacts like the teacher librarians and the folks that support our libraries or media centers, we call them now. It's more than just checking books in and out. It's, they're the IT people in the buildings and things of that nature. And that's not going to be as easy for them to do because they won't have all that support. And even things like the secretaries in the schools. And, they're the first people that when you walk in the school that you see, and they handle a lot of the clerical work that occurs in a building, that's going to be impacted. And I think it's important for people to know that our central office is also taking you know, cuts in their areas. And I know it's always very easy to say, just cut all the administrators, but they're very crucial jobs in the running of the district and the support to our schools. You know, and John can get into that more, but there aren't any positions that aren't going to create some pain here, especially if we do have to deal with the double levy failure.
And
John, how many positions would be cut?
Yeah, let me answer the first part of your question too. The process for how we determine which cuts we make. So it's a complex thing that we have to do. First of all, you have to look at what the levy actually funds, and many of the things that we've talked about are those activities and things that the levy actually funds. We also have to look at our contracts, how other funds work. But we worked with our administrators and we asked them, what are the key functions that you value? We worked with our middle school, elementary and high school principals, our district leadership and our cabinet team to make a list of those key functions that we think are really critical for our students moving from pandemic to recovery. And that was a piece of what we did. So we took that information, we looked at our contracts, we looked at how the funding works, and then we made some very, very difficult decisions. None of these decisions are good decisions. They're just the lesser of bad decisions. So I'm really happy that you mentioned, I'm glad that you didn't forget about our librarians because they're a piece of, you know, they're funded by our levies as well. And our elementary libraries are taking a big hit during this thing. It should the levy fail as well.
So how many positions would be lost?
Yeah, I have that information and I could pull it up while we're talking. It's, you know, we're looking at just in the first round, I'll talk generally, over 100 positions in the enrollment loss and probably double that in a double levy failure. And it's not positions, you know, it's coaching stipends, it's funding transportation for field trips and athletics and some of those other pieces that go along with those things.
About how many employees?
Things like after school clubs. Oh, I'm sorry.
I just got 100, but I didn't know how many employees you had.
We have about, I believe it's, let me check that because I get that figure. It's a lot. But let me put up.
We're in the top 5 players in the county.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, let me pull up my slide deck from that and I'll be able to answer that employee question.
It's a people intensive business, isn't it?
Well, yeah, and 85% of our overall budget goes to salaries because it is a human endeavor. If it weren't, we'd put computers in front of kids and have them do the teaching. It doesn't work that way. So it's a real labor intensive endeavor to transport students from their homes to their schools, to greet them at the doors, to manage them, you know, supervise them as they're eating and going through the hallways and managing their learning and intervening and all of those things that we do to support them along their way.
Jody, did you have anything?
I just have a quick question. There's been a bit of a turnover in leadership in the district as far as superintendent. And I just wondered, John, you're the interim?
Yes, I was hired in December. Well, I was appointed in December. I started in February, the 1st of February. The levy failed February 8th, and I've been working really hard to kind of pick up the pieces and move us forward.
So where are you in that? Are you still on a search or what's?
I am interim through the end of the year. The school board will will need to get together and decide how they want to move forward with the position beyond that.
And Victoria, I believe the last 2 superintendents have left and both received large payouts. And I know that is one of the issues that some people have regarding the levy. How does the school board convince the public that you guys are good stewards of public taxes?
I absolutely understand people's concern, and we knew that this was going to be upsetting, and people would be angry about the payouts. But as a board, we really agonized about those decisions, and we had to do, in both cases, we had to do what was right for students and our staff. And I feel comfortable that we made the right decisions, and I feel very comfortable in John's work with us so far. And we want to look forward. We're looking forward. We're not going to look back. We've had to make some very hard decisions, and that's what boards have to do. I mean, we're there to make the hard decisions. And we knew that politically it might hurt us, but when it's right, it's right. And that's just how we had to proceed.
So how do you convince the public that you're good stewards of their money?
I think that when they saw that, we had many people that reached out afterwards, some of them directly to the board and some to us as individuals. And I think, especially in this last situation, we were very transparent about the reasoning behind it. We went through, as you know, a large process. And, when you have an investigation that gives you information that is not good for your students and staff, you have to act on it. Whether it's going to be politically advantageous or not, it just is the right thing to do.
And I'll just add to a little bit to that. Some of the things that we are doing to build trust. One is we engaged in an interactive survey, a thought exchange. We asked the question, what can we learn from this levy failure? And one of the things that Victoria's owning and expressing that she understands and knows that people are frustrated about the payouts. So we know that there's some trust to rebuild, and we're working really hard to do that. We have a new strategic plan that we're beginning to go out. Well, not beginning, we're just completing our stakeholder feedback piece around that. We're organizing our work so that when we move from pandemic to recovery, we are organized around the education of our students, the instruction, the education, and the support of our students. I'll be for my entry plan, doing some listening sessions and some surveys and going out. I've met with every single principal, almost. I shouldn't say that. There are 38 schools. I think I'm 35 in. And so I've met with about 35 principals. I've walked around and talked to staff members. We've started and we're just listening, trying to understand and responding and reassuring people that, we're moving in the right direction with our strategic plan, with our listening, with our communications, with our responding to people related to this levy. We're trying to be responsive to what we're learning and hearing about what their concerns are. The trust, Victoria mentioned our communication. We've put that into high gear and tried to be a little bit more robust in our communication plans around this. And so, I think that you'll see moving forward that we're going to work really hard to engage, and not only engage, but respond and be and invite our community in to help us think about the best way to support and educate our kids. And I do have the answer for you. And the reason I got it backwards in my head. I've only been here a couple of months, so pardon me for not having that number exactly in my head, but about around 23,000 students, 4,416 staff members, 38 schools, 95 languages spoken, 51.27% of our students receive free or reduced lunch. So that was, you were right on, Victoria, just north of 50%. And we have at any one time, we have about 1,000 students in our system designated as homeless.
Now that, and the 4,400 staff members, are those FTEs?
I
Or is
believe
that
so.
actual people?
I don't know the answer to that. I don't know the answer to that.
I think it's FTE, John. I'm pretty
Okay.
sure that's FTE.
Okay. I can respond. I can ask that question. Yeah.
And now I want to get back to Victoria. In addition to the payouts to a couple of recent superintendents, then a couple of years ago, the district, along with many other districts, they instituted sharp increases in teacher salaries.
Mhm.
Is this kind of the end result of those raises?
I don't think that the end result of, I don't think we really, and John, you could correct me, but I didn't personally hear from a single person that said they were mad because teachers were making more money. And so, you know, and we want our teachers to make decent wages for our community. Obviously, we have to also be responsible financially, but we want people to work here. We want the best staff we can get for our kids. And that was a statewide strike. I don't think there was any school district that walked away from that unharmed, I guess. And it was very challenging down here.
I'm sorry to cut you off, Victoria. I didn't mean.
Okay, go ahead.
Sorry about that. Your thing is, I would say that is a pressure. I would say also that our salaries are very similar to our neighbor, Vancouver. And I would tell you that there are some pressures on increasing salaries for our classified staff. We had at any one time, we have in the hundreds of unfilled classified positions, and many of those support our special education students. So that's a pressure that in order to attract and retain people, we've got to have those salaries be competitive to even be able to do the functions that we have. So I would say it's a pressure, not a significant pressure in terms of the end result. The pressure really is the possibility that we won't have these levy funds. That's the pressure.
And I want to clarify, I think earlier you said that just because the enrollment decline, that you're looking at reducing staff by 100 anyway, but then if the levy doesn't pass, the reductions would be greater, or did I mishear that?
That is correct.
Okay. What's the reason for enrollment decline?
You know, I've asked 100 people that question, and I've gotten 100 different answers to that. I think it's multifaceted. One of the things that somebody told me that seems to anecdotally ring true is the demographics of the Vancouver area are changing. It used to be that for every 3 households you'd have, or every 4 households, you'd have 3 of them with kids. And now that's almost flipped a little bit. You have a lot more retirees, fewer students in those houses. I think that's a factor. I think there's been a movement to homeschool kids, and some kids have had success, and families are feeling successful in that mode. So folks are taking, are keeping them in there for now. I think there's something to be said about birth rates right now as well. And those all seem to be factors that are contributing to and I think I think the private schools have picked up some students as well. If you ask me a fourth thing. But the least significant of them all.
It sounds like young families can't afford to buy a home here anymore.
Yeah.
Well, that's true.
It seems to be what I'm hearing. And I've talked to a lot of, everywhere I go, I try to talk to people and ask them questions about their experience and with the school system. And every young person who's bought a new home is buying them out away from the area because first of all, they're available and less expensive. And so, I think that's definitely a factor as well.
Yep.
Sure.
Definitely.
Craig or Jody, anything else?
I don't have anything else.
Yeah, just one last question. I think it kind of goes back to what we talked about a little earlier. So, which is the role of levy money and paying for counselors and nurses and support people. So it seems to me like a lot of kids have been knocked off the path toward education and their journey towards graduation. And I want to know a little bit more about how the levy money supports that. I know that I believe the state legislature might have kicked in some more money in the supplemental budget for districts around the state to help with that this year. But I'm just wondering how important that is, and if you can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I will tell you that, to graduate students, they need to get credits. And there's been a lot of disruption to their schooling over the years. And not only for those students in high school, but those students that are coming up through the system that are going to have large gaps in their learning. So that's a big issue, and our levies do support us to intervene with students. We have a freshman success program in all of our high schools, and so we support our deans, for example, support our freshman success. And should the levy fail, we're going to have to part with our deans, and that's a real important function of what they do. Other people can take that work on, but there's only so much bandwidth any individual or group of people can get. There's coming out of the pandemic, there's been a significant increase, and I think Victoria alluded to it before, mental health issues, behavioral issues. Students have are needing support and help just to socialize in an academic setting. So all of those all of those people that, we're not sure what they do, I'll tell you what they do. They support kids, and the support of students is going to be even more important socially, academically, emotionally, behaviorally, and not to mention all of the athletics and the music and the things that kids look forward to coming to school are absolutely critical, I think, to a well-rounded and healthy kid. So I can't stress enough how critical these funds are to help our students in all of those ways.
So John, will security is always an issue at schools these days. Will that be affected by if the levy fails?
Well, we lost our SROs, so we no longer have school resource officers, and so that was a hit. We did not increase our security staff. When we talked to our principals and our district leaders, safety and security was something that came to the top of the list for students right now. So we've reduced that less, but again, our deans at the middle and high school, our assistant principals that will be reducing should the levy fail at the elementary are very important pieces to the security operations in our schools. So the answer is yes. We've tried to protect it as much as we can, knowing that that's important to our community, knowing that's important to our principals and our staffs, but it will, yes, be impacted significantly.
That's just right there.
Great. Victoria, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's important to, just because there's a lot of misinformation out there floating around in the world, that we know what the levy does not pay for. It's not paying or either our basic ed funds for critical race theory. That is not happening in our district. It does not pay for the state mandated sex education classes. That's paid out of basic ed, and it's mandated by the state. And as always, a parent can opt their child out if they review the curriculum and they don't feel that that's what is right for their child. They can opt out of that, but that does not come out of levy money. And I think it's important to know that the levy funds, while nobody likes the payouts, it did not come out of levy money. And so the levy is strictly for those things that basic education dollars pay for. And we're very limited on what we can use them for. When we put our proposal out there, we have to account for all the levy money, and it cannot be something that should be coming out of basic ed.
Okay, great. Thank you. John, any final thoughts?
Oh, just thank you for the opportunity to come in front of you. We appreciate anything that we can do to help people understand what the levy does support and the importance of these funds to help our students in a time of great need. So thank you so much for the opportunity to share that with folks, and just appreciate it.
Great. Well, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you and good luck.
Thank you.
Thanks.